I'm Larry Zepp, and I'm pleased to be here tonight. I'm building a Zenith Zodiac 650B, and that's why I'm here to tell you about that. Building the airplane in my garage was the catchword that we used for the maker station, and most people don't believe it. When you tell them you're building an airplane in your garage, they think RC model. But in this case, it's a two-seat aircraft. It's all aluminum, and I'm here to tell you that if you get a kit and you get it from a reputable company that has the design worked out, it's much easier to learn how to build your airplane and build it in your garage or your barn or wherever than it used to be. The FAA allows U.S. citizens to build an aircraft for our education as long as you build 51% of the airplane. You have to do more than half the work. And you probably don't know that the United States is one of the few countries in the world that allows its citizens to do this. There's only a handful of others, our neighbor Canada, New Zealand, Australia, but then the list gets real short. And if you know about the history of Experimental Aircraft Association, you probably know that this right to be able to build your own aircraft was gained in major part by Paul Poberezny, the founder of EAA, in the late 50s. And he was a shuttle diplomat for our emerging hobby to Washington back when the FAA was called the CAA, back in the 50s. Most people now use plans or kits. Most people do not start sketching on a napkin and then go build an airplane that they design themselves, unless they're an aeronautical engineer. When the plane is complete, the FAA or their designated examiner will examine it and see if they can see any faults and reasons why you shouldn't try to fly it. They will not go fly it for you. They'll just look at it on the ground. And then if they think you did a good job, and if you can prove that you did 51% or more of the work, then they will give you a temporary certificate and a test area to go try out the flying of your aircraft. After you fly off the test period, then you're ready to go. You get a standard airworthiness certificate, and it's just like any other aircraft. If you did build the airplane and can prove it, one of the big advantages is that the builder of that aircraft is by definition the manufacturer. And the FAA will give you a certificate, if you request it, that you are the certified repair person for that aircraft. And you can do your own inspections because you're the manufacturer, and you can do your 100-hour inspection or your annual inspection. And as long as you know what you're doing, you're the repairman. You do not need an A&P aircraft mechanics certificate. Now, you can't work on anyone else's airplane, and if you sell it, the person you sell it to has to bring it back to you or hire a mechanic. We're going to be discussing aluminum riveted construction. That's very common in aircraft, and it's a very easy way to have a kit airplane that's easy to assemble. So we're not going to talk about wood construction. We're not going to talk about composite construction. This kit is all made out of thin aluminum, and it's riveted together with rivets that you pull from one side. And that makes it easy to build and pretty quick. So one of the things that is neat about this kit comes from one of the few companies in the aircraft kit industry that's 20 years old. There's only a handful of those. Zenith Aircraft is family run, and they've got a group of companies that have been doing this for 20 years. Where their father designed the airplanes and the sons run the different companies to supply the parts. It's very important if you go to Oshkosh and see this really whiz-bang airplane, that if you send them a lot of money as a down payment for your kit, that they end up shipping it to you. If it isn't really designed yet and they don't really know how to do kits, you may never see your money or your parts. So one of the things about this is a tried and true company that's been around a long time in the kit airplane business. The other thing that's an advantage, all these aluminum skins and spars come pre-drilled with pilot holes. It saves a tremendous amount of time. They have a router table which uses a computer to punch these little pilot holes in the right place on everything. And for the spars, they put the pilot holes in before they do their bending. And not having to lay out all those hole positions, and if you lay it out wrong and drill it in the wrong place, you go buy a new piece of aluminum. And that's really discouraging. So once you get the sheet like this, laid on top of the little aluminum ribs, you've got a Sharpie mark in the center of the ribs. When you see that black Sharpie mark through the little pre-drilled holes, you're there. Then you drill a few holes and pull a few rivets. And it's self-jigging. So that removes most of the layout errors that you'd have. One of the things that I think is really easy with Zenith aircraft, they will either sell you the plans and instruction manuals only, if you want to build every single piece yourself in your workspace, or they will sell you partial kits, one at a time, and you can buy the kits as you need them and not have to shell out $20,000 when you start. Or if you want, you can shell out the $20,000, which is the complete kit for this airplane, minus the engine and the instruments, and have it all sitting there. They're one of the few companies that let you do it all three ways. And the other thing that's nice, even though this plane has a 27-foot wingspan, you build each piece separately. So all these pieces are built on a 4-foot by 12-foot table, and then once you get that piece done, you go put it in your storage barn or your rented storage locker or somewhere, and then you go build the next one. And until you have all the individual parts like the wings and the tail and the fuselage built, you don't need a hanger to go put it together. This is a cutaway view of what my project is going to look like when it's done. There's fuel tanks in the wing. The wing has ribs and then aluminum skins, and most builders start with the rudder. And you can see after we go through these features, when the FAA came to visit Zenith Aircraft, they laid out every single piece that's in the complete kit, and it's all in that picture. Those are all the pieces you get in the complete kit, and that's all you need to build the complete airplane until you're ready to go order an engine and some instruments. And when you look at it, that's not that many parts. I mean, maybe I just think that because I'm partway through. But here's how we start. Everybody that starts most aluminum kit airplanes builds the rudder first. And for the Zenith, the rudder has every skill to build the rudder that you will need to build the whole airplane. So this is the perfect example that if you can build the rudder, given more time and more perseverance, you can build the whole thing. And one of the things that I'd like you to do after we're done, if you're up around the front, pick this up. This is now my workshop sign, because this was my practice rudder. I upgraded to the model that I'm building. This was the rudder for the previous model, and the new rudder is a little bit different shape than this. So this is a workshop sign, and it was the thing that I learned on because I didn't go to Missouri to the training school. But this is strong, and it's only 5 pounds. And when you push on it, it's real strong, but it's only 5 pounds. That's pretty amazing. And you can see these little rivets. This is an aircraft grade of like a pop rivet. And instead of having someone that has to buck the rivet on the other side, you either use a rivet gun that looks just like your hardware store rivet gun by hand, but there's so many rivets in this that you probably wear out your hand doing it with this. So you get one that you hook up to your air compressor like this, and then every time you pull the trigger, it goes pop, and you're done with that rivet. That's cool. That gets very productive and encouraging that you're making progress. So there's some pictures of how I started. And if you look down in the corner, I have the date function of this little camera I'm using turned on. So I started this in March 6th of 2011. I've been at it about 1.5 years, and I've built the rudder, the tail, the flaps, the ailerons, and the right wing is almost done. So I'm making some progress. Also in the right picture there, that's when you're starting to put the skin on top of the ribs. Notice that black stuff. I'm convinced that it's impossible to build any metal airplane without a lot of duct tape. Duct tape is an important clamp in our arsenal of parts. Now after you get the duct tape and everything squeezed on there, then you drill holes, and these funny things that look like shell casings, they're called clecos. They're a little expanding clamp that you put through 2 holes in metal, and when you let up, they hold it together until you're ready to rivet. So if you're building a metal airplane, these are your friend, because there's no way you can clamp the thing together without them. And there's different sizes for different holes. After the rudder, I got the kit for the tail, the rest of the tail. And this is building the horizontal surface that's called the stabilizer. And that's built the same way as this is. You've got ribs and you rivet them together. After you drill the holes, you've got to take it apart and get all the burrs off the holes and apply some primer. And then you put it back together with the clecos, and then you start riveting everything and pulling the clecos out and doing more riveting. The right picture, or the left picture first, is the completed tail. And I made up a little flyer, and the flyer is in the metal supermarket building, it's in the library, and it directs people to our Chapter 2 meetings, and it says, yes, you can build your own airplane. So we're trying to promote that. On the right picture there, the 2 outside surfaces are the ailerons that go on the outer part of the wing, and the 2 inside surfaces that are bigger are the flaps that go on the inner half of the wing. So you build those 2 surfaces after you build the tail, and after you're done with those, you wrap them up and you keep them clean and clear the table off, and then you start building the wing, which is about 13 feet long and about that wide. So you're using the same table over and over, and it's the same skills, and that's pretty satisfying. And when you get done to rivet, you just go pop, 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 pop. Now we're looking at the wing skeleton, as they call it, on the left picture. Notice that those are a lot bigger ribs than we had for the rudder or for the rest of the tail, but it's still all the same stuff. And the way that the Zenith Zodiac kit is, the wing spar, which is that I-beam looking thing that supports the entire wing, that comes from the Zenith factory completely done. It's got solid rivets, it's factory riveted, it's got a nameplate on it of the date that they finished it and a serial number, and you just hang the ribs on there. And instead of having to pound out the ribs, all the ribs came press formed, and all I had to do was put the Sharpie mark on them and drill some holes, and it was ready to rivet together. So that went pretty quick. Then you start putting the skin on, and for the wing skin, that's almost 13 feet long. You need a helper to maneuver that thing around, but it's got all the pilot holes drilled in, and when you have it lined up just right, you can see the little Sharpie stripe through the pilot holes, and then you use your duct tape to hold it down and start drilling. The left picture shows that part of the wing tipped upwards, so now we're looking at the bottom. And one of the things I really like about this two-seat airplane that I'm building, if you look at the right picture, that light-colored rectangle that's cut out of the top of the wing, that's an optional baggage locker. So that has a hinged door in the top of the wing. It's almost 2 foot square by about this deep, and you can put up to 40 pounds in each side of the baggage lockers. That's a lot of storage space for a little airplane. So I opted for that option. It made sense to me. It's a little more work, but boy, does that help when you're traveling somewhere. And I do want to travel somewhere. Now I'm doing 2 major modifications to this kit aircraft. The first one is that I'm not using an air-cooled aircraft engine. I'm using a converted Honda engine, which is converted by Viking aircraft engines, and it's a liquid-cooled car engine that is adapted with a reduction drive to be an aircraft engine. This engine has electronic ignition, it's got fuel injection, it can never ice up with carburetor ice because there's no carburetor. And it's got a lot of advantages, and it's about half the price of an aircraft engine, either a Rotax or a Jabiru. So I'm taking a gamble on that, but I think it's going to be a real good engine. Puts out 110 horsepower. The other one is that I'm a firm believer in the ballistic recovery system's parachute. When I worked for another company, I got to visit St. Paul, Minnesota in 1986 and visited the very early company that is BRS. That was when they were making the parachute for the Cessna 150 trainer. Since then, they've survived by doing mostly military work and making parachutes for ultralight planes, and now the Cirrus. So Cirrus is now a part owner of BRS Parachute. They bought into it because they believed in it so much. And the 2 principals in Cirrus had a mid-air collision about 10 years ago and decided that they were just really lucky they lived through a mid-air collision with another aircraft because their friend in the other airplane died. So they decided that every Cirrus aircraft will use this parachute. And on the 2 pictures on the right are pictures of a builder that's in St. Paul, the same city as BRS is. He has installed this parachute between the instrument panel and the firewall because this aircraft has a big enough canopy that it's very difficult to install it behind the passenger compartment because the canopy is so big. So I'm going to copy what he did, do the same kind of installation, and I don't have any misgivings about the design of this aircraft, but I believe that someday I might meet a Canada Goose when I'm flying. And if one of those either breaks off a blade on your prop or goes through the windshield, there's a big red handle you can pull, and then a military-grade rocket pulls this parachute out, and the whole airplane floats down to the ground. And it's only the cost of a good radio, so it's pretty cheap insurance. So those are the 2 major things that I'm doing to this plane that are not standard. They're taking additional time, but I think it's worth it. And I hope to be doing this soon.